So let's address the latest movie controversy, and that is around the Odyssey, because we just can't have nice things, apparently. Now, if you're someone who has an issue with the trailer, just hear me out for a minute, okay? People are upset because these Greeks who are in the Odyssey don't look Greek, don't sound Greek. And to that, I gotta say, where have you been for the entire history of Hollywood? All right, yes, we've had inclusion over the last 10 years or so. It's been a big push to have people who look like the real people be the people that we see on screen. But let's be real, this is Hollywood. Of course, you're going to get as many stars, as many names, as many people who will draw in butts to that theater to sit in those seats as possible. All right, so yes, Matt Damon is Odysseus. Does that make sense? No. Lupita Nyong'o. People are upset about Lupita because all of a sudden everyone is a historian and knows that Helen of Troy had fair skin, as if they all read that. No, you didn't. You watched Troy and you liked Claire Danes and you wanted someone who looked like her in this movie. All right, you don't know. And yeah, is Lupita Nyong'o, kind of not right for this role as far as the color of her skin? Yeah, but I don't care. It's not going to make a difference. Lupita Nyong'o is a beautiful woman, so that's all you need. Now that brings me to the loudest concern that I've heard about this movie and what's really at the heart of a lot of this controversy, and that is the fact that everyone in this movie sounds like they're from North America. There are no accents in this movie, specifically no Greek accents. And that is confusing to me for a lot of different reasons. First, I would be curious if anyone who has this opinion, and if you do and you're already typing in the comment section, just think about this for a second. Would you be able to pick out, if we had 10 different people with 10 different accents, would you be able to pick out the Greek accent? I just don't think most people would be able to pick out that accent and know exactly how it's supposed to sound. And then also throughout Hollywood history, a lot of times when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like a British accent, if anything. Guys, Odysseus wasn't British. He wasn't from the United States, sure, but he wasn't British either. And even the Greek accent that you have today wouldn't be the same as 730 BC when Homer wrote the Iliad and Odyssey. Now, I will say that I'm speaking from experience here. I actually went to college and did post-grad work in Koine Ancient Greek. So I know and understand Ancient Greek. But when I'm talking about Ancient Greek, I'm talking about looking at texts that are from 30 to 80 AD. When you're talking about Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad, you're talking about 730, 700 BC. That's 700 years of a difference. The English language, just look at the last 400 years, has changed so much. If you were, flashback to 1600, you would have a very difficult time understanding people, and especially being able to read things. Now, if you did that for 700 years, imagine that. There's been a lot of change, a lot of variance. So even people who have an understanding of ancient Greek texts like me, I don't think I could look at Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad, and I've never tried, but I don't think I would be able to understand that, because we're talking about 700 to 800 years of a difference. The language evolves, people evolve. So even if you had people who today were, let's say we put everyone in this movie is Greek and they all have Greek accents, but they're speaking English because it's an English audience. But that accent would be totally different than the accent of Odysseus. Now, you might be like, well, it would feel more like it, but that's really up to you. That's just subjective. But if we're having a conversation about oh, this trailer sucks because they did this, to me, that argument doesn't make any sense. Now, what does make sense is the use of language, because a lot of times when we're dealing with period pieces and we're going back so far, we're still trying to have language that would feel old. And I will admit that there were two different times in this trailer that I was kind of like, oh, You know, when Tom Holland says dad,
My dad is coming home.
that felt a little weird. Now, maybe that's also because Tom Holland has a pretty high-pitched voice. He doesn't have like that typical lower gruff kind of a sound for their voice. He's not Matt Damon. Maybe it would sound different if it was coming from Matt Damon than Tom Holland. But at the same time, you know, saying dad is a little weird. You would have expect father. It was strange. Now, the daddy part of Robert Pattinson,
You're pining for a daddy you didn't even know.
that part makes a little bit more sense. Still a little odd to hear it. I will admit that. But you know, as someone who's like trying to like point at like the infancy of this character, it kind of makes sense that he would try to use that kind of language to make him seem so immature as he's bullying him essentially. But I will admit that overall, like that idea is a little strange, and I do hope that that's not a continuing thing throughout the movie where we have really modern words that feels so different for a period piece like this throughout the script. I really hope that's not the case. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the look of this movie because I've seen some people pointing out like this specific scene actually. There were a lot of people who were pointing out like the look of the armor doesn't feel right. You know, people weren't like this. I would ask what their opinion of 300 is. I would expect, you know, a lot of the people who are mad about this trailer are also big fans of 300, which is completely not right. Like that was just Frank Miller, who is a comic book guy who wrote The Dark Knight Returns and like some really great comics. He also wrote the comics for 300, and that's what the movie is based off of. But that is not grounded in reality. The Spartans didn't look like that. But I will say, like, would you rather have these guys look how they do in the Odyssey in this trailer? Or would you rather have them look like how they probably were? Which, again, this was not an army that was, you know, everyone was a paid soldier. You know, like people think about that as if like these armies were getting paid like today. You know, you have guys in the army and they get paid to be in the army. That's not the case for most of these soldiers. These guys were farmers. These guys were merchants. Like these guys were fishermen, and they didn't have all the fancy armor. I think it's highly unlikely that you would have all of these guys looking as dope as they look in 300 or in Troy or in a lot of these movies that everybody else loves, but specifically in the Odyssey, they probably wouldn't look like that either. But you know why they do? Because it looks cool. The reason why Agamemnon looks like so intimidating and has that weird black armor is because it looks dope. Because Christopher Nolan likes making things look super cool. Have you seen these movies? Have you seen any of them? That's his whole style. His whole style is like these, I would probably define it in a word of crisp. Everything looks so crisp in a Christopher Nolan movie. The metal looks smooth. It looks like it's been fabricated somewhere all throughout his movies. That's the look that he was going for. The blues and the oranges, that's just how he is. Like, so if anyone has a problem with the look of this movie, understand that you are dealing with the most stylized director out there right now. You can look at a single frame of a Christopher Nolan movie and know exactly who directed that thing because of the distinct look that he has. So anyone who has a problem with the look of this movie, well, I guess you got to check out the rest of Christopher Nolan's filmography. You can't be a fan of Christopher Nolan if you're like looking at the style of this stuff and being like, oh, I just don't like it. It doesn't feel real to me. You know, armor doesn't look like that. You know, these giants in the field with a guy getting chucked through a freaking tree. That's just awesome. And if you don't like that, I don't think you like Christopher Nolan movies. like, and that's not to say you have to. I'm just saying, like, I don't understand how you can have that kind of a comment and a criticism of this trailer and be a fan of his work. Like, if you don't like him, you don't like him. Like, move on, that's fine. And you could complain about it if you want. But I'm just saying, from my perspective, that criticism rings false. Now, the movie hasn't come out. I don't know if it's going to be good. But what I can say is that watching that trailer, it looks so stinking cool. So if you're mad about it, that's fine. You can be mad about it. I think you're wrong, but you can think I'm wrong, and that's absolutely fine. And if you like me talking about this kind of stuff, leave a comment down below. Show me a little bit of support. Maybe hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Most of the time I'm talking about physical media on this channel, or I do publish a lot of shorts about like movie facts and trivia and stuff I'm currently watching. So maybe check out some of that stuff, and I will see you in the next one.